Oh, I'll and happy when we meet. I'll fly away. No more cold iron shackles on my feet. I'll fly away. Oh, I'll fly away. Oh, glory. I'll fly away in the morning when I hallelujah, I'll fly away. Just a few more weary days and then I'll fly away to a land where joys never end. I'll fly away. Oh, I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away in the morning when I die. Hallelujah, by and by. I'll fly away. Oh, I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away in the morning when I die. Hallelujah, by and by. I'll fly away. I'll fly away. I'll fly away.
Friends, welcome. This is brief pause. Okay, the mics are on, but I think the system is not on.
Word is changing during the system.
Yep, thank you. So again, welcome, welcome. This is a gathering born in love, drawn together by shared sorrow, but also one in thanksgiving, one in gratitude, because today we are here, all of us, to give thanks, wholehearted thanks to God for the gift of John Post's life. In this company of love, we will remember the love that John showed to so many. In this gathering of compassion, we will remember the integrity with which he lived his life. We will remember, and we will thank God for the privilege and the blessing that each of us had of sharing in John's life. I've been a pastor at Greenfield Hill Church in Fairfield, Connecticut since 1989. And it was in 1989 that I first met John Post, church dad extraordinaire, volunteer for all things, possessor of boundless energy and positivity. In other words, the same John Post that you knew too, whether you met him like me in the last century or in this one. A father whose love for his family was a delight to witness. The grin on his face when his kids walked in the door was that same grin that years later his grandchildren came to know. He was then who he ever was, a lover of life, passionate and caring, and just fun to be with. John and Gail soon became our dear and cherished friends, great gifts in my life. One of the most memorable events of my early years as a pastor was in fact provided by John, although fun was not really the word to describe it. John fell out of a tree one day, and not just any fall, not just any tree, but a pretty dramatic fall from a very tall tree that landed him in the ICU and scared the bejesus out of all of us. Yes. Being a very young pastor at the time, this was the most frightening thing I had ever been a part of. And yet somehow, and this will not surprise you, my enduring memory from the ICU is John laughing at something. I don't even know what, but I remember tubes and bandages and machines beeping and John grinning. Everything you knew about John, the glass half full, the positivity that couldn't be quenched, the relentless optimism, there it was. And of course, somehow in the end, he was just fine. There is a passage in the Bible that I've always loved, where the prophet Jeremiah is trying to describe a deeply good person, a person of truest integrity. And the image that he reaches for is of a tree, nothing to do with falling out of one, but with what it means to be rooted, to be truly rooted. And Jeremiah says this, the good person, they are like a tree planted by water, sending out its roots by the stream. It shall not fear when heat comes, its leaves shall stay ever green. In the year of drought, it is not anxious. It never ceases to bear fruit. That was John Post. Strong and true, rooted, deeply rooted in all that is good, rooted in integrity and kindness and selflessness and service, in optimism and constant hope. A man who delighted in life and in God's creation, who knew the true meaning of service and who lived with the integrity that comes from understanding what is good and what is true and what is lasting. He shall be like a tree planted by water, it says, sending out its roots by the stream. That was John. The presence today of so many people who have come to honor John makes clear what I am about to say about his life. And it is this: John Post's life was profoundly important. His life was profoundly important in this world. Because those who stand among us as those trees planted by water, those in whose shade we grow, they are the ones who are most important to us. They are the ones who show us what is good and what is true, what it means to live with compassion and care, what it means to be faithful and honest, humble and helpful. John Post's life was such a hope-filled life. And each of you who shared in it, however much, for however long, knows that you were given a gift, an important gift, a gift that we are here today to celebrate. Yes, with tears, but in hope and with gratitude and with deepest faith in a time to come when we will all one day be gathered again. Thank you for being here. I'm going to invite Gail forward.
I'm Gail Post. You're sure?
Yes.
Thank you all for coming to this celebration of John. For about 17 years, John had two books on his nightstand. One was Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time. He would enjoy about a page and a half of that book every night for 17 years. The other book, which spoke of his love of writing mission statements, was 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He readily adopted habit number 2, begin with the end in mind, as a principle he could apply to all aspects of his life. John based his career decisions on long-term versus short-term goals and became quite successful. He then applied the same philosophy, begin with the end in mind, when we were raising our children. Based on our reading that the strongest foundation for a child is built in the first 3 years of life, we would look at our toddlers and imagine the adults we hoped they would someday become. We didn't have specific goals for our children, as it related to career path or lifestyle, but we did have broad characteristics in mind, such as empathy and personal responsibility. We decided when our kids were very young what behaviors we would have to implement as parents that would encourage their development as competent adults. As the more confident parent, John tried to bring me along in the imposition of consequences. I realized the importance of consequences, but I was not as confident in their execution as I would dramatically describe it. Once he watched me discipline one of the kids and said, "Here's the problem. You expect the kids to turn around and say to you, 'You know what, Mom? That is a fair punishment for my missed expectations. And I am happy that you love me enough to set me on the straight path.' That," he said, "is never going to happen. So get in, get out, and move on." In 2018, I had known John for 48 years. I had watched him mount a successful career, show up as a great dad, and accomplish many great things as he bloomed in his retirement. In 2018, he was diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic lung cancer, and I watched him respond to his diagnosis with hope and optimism and strength. I was not surprised by his ability to do this, but I was most certainly in awe. John acted upon his most favorite habit, begin with the end in mind, in these past 4 years. Although the average lifespan for someone with John's diagnosis is 18 months, John lived 4 years. And he didn't just survive, he lived those 4 years. John mounted a conscious two-pronged offensive to attack his cancer. He used his analytical skills and his knowledge of science to understand his disease and participate actively in his treatments. He added his glass is full philosophy to muster the courage to endure radiation, chemotherapy, and immunotherapy. When he realized there were no treatment options left, he grappled honestly with that reality as well. John showed us how one dies with dignity and honesty and authenticity while also enjoying his friends and his family. You all helped him stay in his house by maintaining that house and his garden and by keeping him well-fed and engaged. We spent as much time with him as possible and enjoyed Maine, where we all celebrated with meals and treats, games, and time on the lake. I remember one evening when we brought him to the lake to enjoy a cocktail, the grandkids swimming, and a beautiful sunset. He smiled and said, "I am so happy right now," even as his disease had left him compromised. John showed us all what strength looked like, even when he could no longer leave his recliner. He showed us that hope can exist even in the face of a terminal diagnosis. And he showed us that acceptance is possible in the face of death, even as you know all you're going to miss. I do miss him, and there's a hole in my life right now in the shape of John. I keep him alive by learning from my grandchildren's suggestions, that I look for his face in the clouds, and that I notice the birds and sense his presence. I am grateful to John for arranging for us to be here today with his friends, and for allowing me to feel the lightness that comes with the knowledge that many hearts and shoulders are sharing the weight of the same grief. I rejoice in that as John would want. Thank you all so much for coming.
Hammer.
Gail. First of all, for breaking the mood for tears. As you can tell already, I'm quite emotional, and this is going to be hard for me. And so bear with me. My name is Glenn, and besides his two sisters and brother, I'm the one who has known John the longest. Gail and I probably will tell you about that a little bit. But we go back to the late 60s, John and I do. So what I've written when I visited John in April, I wrote on the flagging back and I wrote these words down and gave them to him later because we knew he wasn't going to make it. But you don't want to talk about someone afterwards. They're not hearing it. I want them to hear what I was going to say. And so these words are what I have titled The John Effect. I first met Soda Man at Memorial High School in Orinda. John came with a smile, an infectious laugh, and according to the girls, dreamy eyes. When he arrived in California, he kept asking where to get a soda. Now, all us Californians, all we knew was Coke and 7-Up. So he affectionately became known as Soda Man. John and I soon became friends and started hanging out together. He spent a couple years at Chico State, and then he came to UC Santa Barbara. And that's when things really started to get fun. John and I shared an apartment in Isla Vista with Doug and Mumbles. John and I were fraternity brothers at Sigma Chi. You could see from the wreath how much that meant to him and to his brothers. We shared TGs and beer and dances and beer, Santa Barbara recreational basketball, softball, soccer, and beer, sand volleyball, yeah, beer, and skiing at Lake Tahoe, doing underfrogs and schnapps. Yeah, schnapps. And John was an original member with me of the infamous Sha Na Na, a lip sync routine that was carried on for decades after our first performance. And if you look at some of the pictures, we really were greased and ready to kick ass. Somehow we graduated, and John went on to a very successful career in the pharmaceutical world. Time, family commitments, and distance didn't allow us to get together much, but we kept together by phone. When I think of John, a lot of thoughts go through my mind. He was smart, retaining information, and able to spew it back to you without hesitation. And when he wanted to learn something, he dove into it and he researched it. Before building his dream home, he had three 3-inch binders of research material. At least that's the only ones he showed me. He probably had more, but that's all I saw. So his dream home, Swallowtail Farm, accomplished. And he showed the same drive with his cooking, his gardening, his push for sustainability, his appointment on the Connecticut Law Grievance Committee, and everything else he thought important. John loved life. When I asked him to be a crew member on our bicycle team that raced from Oceanside, California to Durango, Colorado, he didn't hesitate. He didn't know what he was getting into, but his love for adventure spurred him on, despite his ongoing battle with leukemia. You may think riding a bicycle that distance is hard, but it really is harder on the crew. John was fantastic and brought his great personality to make him a perfect fit in a very, very trying situation. And I know it was hard on him physically, since it took several weeks for him to recover after that. And John loved his New York Mets, especially this past year, and baseball in general. being a founding member of the Farm Fantasy Baseball League, Farm PHARM. His post pachyderms have pretty much dominated for the nearly 50 years of its existence. And when another club opportunity arose, he'd jump in with both feet, like his IPA group, Ignoble Pursuit of Alcohol. See, that's kind of a theme from when we first met. And his family brought him so much joy. He adored his grandchildren. Any mention of grandchildren, and Papa John would absolutely light up. Kevin, Kristen, he was so proud of you. And Gail, he never stopped loving you. Maybe even closer now than when you were married. There are so many words to express his effect on me and those around him. I told John things that even my wife doesn't know. That's the John effect. John was forward-thinking and forward-acting, and as a lifelong member of Sierra Club, look at what he brought to his community of Litchfield. Environmental awareness, sustainability, solar panels, native pollinated plants. That's the John effect. John demonstrated courage as he battled his illness with ferocity and dignity. He demonstrated passion, friendship, conviction, knowledge, understanding. And this he conveyed to all he interacted with. That's the John effect. John was a good listener, never getting angry outwardly, and always looking out for others. And that rubs off on other people. That's the John effect. In April, when I last visited John, and knowing that his time was getting short, I brought cards and letters from some of his friends in Napa. I'd like to share the words of one of those cards from Barb and Ron Whitman. We have tried to come up with a way to keep your accomplishments always present in our lives. So we came up with these 3 words to serve as guideposts to follow when we are faced with even small challenges and uncomfortable situations. Those words are fortitude, calm, and patience. We will try and embody these characteristics as you have done to help us manage difficult situations. We hope we can be as influential on others as you have been for us. Thank you for the inspiration and know that you have made us better people through your actions. That's the John effect. John was my best man in our wedding, and he was my best friend. But I think it more appropriate to say John was the best man and the best friend to everyone who had the good fortune to know him. And finally, to me, John's legacy and how I will always remember him, and I think how he would want to be remembered best, can be summed up by these 7 words. Be present, but do not disregard tomorrow.
Hello, everyone. For those of you who may not know me, my name is Berta, and I'm the Executive Director here at Litchfield Community Center. I often say that as much as we try to enrich other people's lives with the offerings we have here at the Community Center, our lives are far more enriched by those who walk through the doors. How fortunate I was to be sitting at my desk on a day back in 2013 when a gentleman came to my office door. He introduced himself as John Post and told me he was checking out our town as he was hoping to move from Pennsylvania to Connecticut and be closer to his family. That struck a chord in my heart, and we sat down and talked for about an hour and a half. John later shared that I was the first resident of Litchfield that he spoke to, and I had great marketing skills. It was easy though, because I was feeding off his genuine inquisitiveness and infectious enthusiasm, and I felt like there was an instant friendship. I have to mention that during our first conversation, John shared with me that he had just come from Point Folly, a fairly rustic campground down the road here on Banham Lake, and where he had just camped the previous 2 nights. I found myself thinking, this fella's really got something going for himself. He was so clean and so well dressed and kept. I thought, you came from there? But not to mention his amazing ear-to-ear smile and ease of manner, virtues that we all came to truly appreciate over the years. It wasn't long after that conversation that I received a phone call from John, and he told me he was moving to Litchfield. It was truly a yes moment. With that, our community was gifted with the arrival of a tremendous human being and force extraordinaire. John was truly a champion of community. Just a little over a year after coming to town, he joined our board of directors and went on to serve as president for 3 years. He led us to many great achievements during those years, including expansion of our programs and activities, addressing the efficiencies of our facilities, securing a grant for our solar array, jazzing up our marketing, and constantly nudging us all to remember that we were building community each and every day. But one of the most important and successful initiatives John felt he ever presided over was the careful management and shortening the length of our board meetings. There was no area that John could not find ways to be more efficient. There are too few words that truly qualify the impact John had on us all, with his tremendous character and daily inspiration. As friend John Markelon wrote, John's life was grounded in undying faith in the power of community to redirect humanity's relationship with nature. His work empowered us to live sustainably in our community and ultimately on Earth. There was never a conversation that I shared with John that I wasn't left charged up to do something. He was so insightful, forward-thinking, and encouraging. It was always easy to dream of the possibilities and start strategizing immediately on how to get it done. All complemented with his mannerisms that could not be ignored. His eyes shifting upward to gather his thoughts, the sweeping of his hand across his mustache, the squinting of the eyes and the pursing of the lips and saying, "So, I've been thinking." And there the magic began. There were also very few chats that I had with John where he did not share some news about his family and how much he truly loved and had such pride, respect, and adoration for each one of you. We laughed and cried together often when we spoke about the importance of family, and we cheered with beer and champagne the wonderful early experiences that shaped our lives and the daily happenings that kept us going. I believe I speak for many when I say it was very hard for John knowing how much he was going to miss his family and not being present to witness the gifts that life is sure to bring you. But he also had the deepest gratitude for the life you all shared, made up of so many precious minutes, days, and years. John left this life wanting more time with you, with all of us, but his heart was full of peace knowing you would take good care of each other and that we would take good care of the community that he came so to love. And the grandchildren. It was always wonderful to be shown a new piece of art that one of you made, or a little message you had sent your papa. And it was really fun to hear about all the cool things you're up to. It just tickled him with joy. You certainly affirmed his sense of awe and wonder. I am confident that most of us here came to fully appreciate that ultimately, all of John's deliberate intentions and efforts over the past 10 years that we've witnessed have been for you, the grandkids. He created and lived a sustainable life, mentored the next generation, built community every day with his words and his actions, and treaded lightly on this earth so it would be a healthy one for you to grow up in and to cherish just as he had. It's really wonderful that you know your papa's with the birds and close to you whenever you see one nearby. A cardinal, a robin, a finch, a hawk, a loon, and certainly a swallowtail. We want to be sure your papa comes to visit us here in Litchfield, and that he'll always have a place to land, a branch to pause on his journey as he checks in on all of us. So with this in mind, I'm pleased to share with you on behalf of our community, in particular the Community Center, Litchfield Land Trust, White Memorial, Sustainable Litchfield, and the town of Litchfield, we will be planting 5 trees in the memory of John and dedicating one to each of you, Derek, Emerson, Cormac, Ryan, and Tyler. These trees will grow tall and strong and be loved by many, just as your papa will always be. My final thoughts come from the last few lines of When Great Trees Fall, a beautiful poem written by Maya Angelou. When great souls die, after period peace blooms, slowly and always irregularly. Spaces fill with a kind of soothing electric vibration. Our senses restored, never to be the same, whisper to us, they existed, they existed. We can be, and be better, for they existed. John Ransom Post III, a dear, devoted, and dynamic man. You existed wholeheartedly, and that has made all the difference. We thank you, our friend. We love you, brother of heart.
Just holding it together until the tree. In Maine, there is a frame of photos we gave my dad one year for Father's Day. It's a set of 3 pictures of Kevin and I when we were young with him, paired with a quote. The quote reads, "My father didn't tell me how to live. He lived and let me watch him do it." That sums Dad up perfectly. He was a man who loved life. He was a man who jumped in with both feet and embraced every new interest and adventure with contagious enthusiasm. Most of all, he was a man of many passions. My dad worked hard our entire childhood. He was good at what he did and proud of the things he accomplished, but always came home on the weekends to his passions, his family, his garden, and making his family join him in cleaning up his garden. It took a while for Kevin and I to catch on to the fact that picking up sticks in the yard was not the most fun way to spend a Saturday morning, but he managed to get at least a few years out of us. One thing was undeniable: the passion he had for his interests was infectious. Everyone here has a different path with my dad. Everyone here has a different connection. But I am confident in saying that everyone here will proudly carry that connection with them for the rest of their lives and honor him in their own special ways. Whether it be following a favorite baseball team and tracking their every move, preferably on graph paper, making a certain deliciously boozy eggnog every year at Christmas, hiking a favorite trail to see a beautiful sunset or track a cool bird, growing a massive blackberry bush from a tiny seed, and sharing the jam that comes with it, discovering a new favorite IPA and enjoying it with friends. It may even be meeting someone new and giving them an hour-long rundown about the benefits of geothermal heating. My hope for all of us is that we will never lose these connections. I hope we hold on to them forever and keep them fresh in our minds. Talk about him, tell stories, share pictures, point out the cardinal with a swallowtail swooping through the breeze. And
and most of all, live your best life. Who's always so proud of us when we are enjoying our lives. Taking time out of the everyday chaos and busy work schedules to breathe and take it all in. Something I know he didn't do enough of when he was younger, but relished in and embraced and encouraged at every chance as he grew older. Let's all live our lives as John, JRP, Dad, Papa wanted us, to the fullest, just as he did.
Morning, everyone. I'm Jeff Zulo, involved in the town here, and a lot of experience with John as we try to improve the town under John's guidance. John Post, a life well lived. I met John on a cloudy, cool day in the spring of 2015 at the corner for a cup of coffee. In his calm and infectious, probably many of you have met him at the corner for coffee. In his calm but infectious manner, he asked for help in forming a town committee to drive Litchfield municipal energy use to renewables as quickly as possible. I told him this is a big lift, but I'd asked for the topic to be added to an upcoming Board of Selectmen agenda and wasn't sure how well it would go over. John came to our Board of Selectmen meeting with a detailed pitch, and you can imagine how detailed it was, to create a formal green team that recommended reducing the town's energy consumption by 20% in 3 years. And that's a monumental task in an old Yankee town. The clearness and passionate delivery of John's presentation moved, I have to say, a somewhat doubtful board to create the green team as a town-sanctioned committee. For a person who had moved to Litchfield barely 2 years earlier, this was a remarkable achievement, just to get the board to move and understand the ability of John to convince others of his purpose. John became the chairman of the green team and quickly laid out an agenda of energy and efficiency objectives that began with a broad analysis of our municipal energy footprint and created the first major project, an LED conversion of our schools, which wasn't without some controversy. After his initial success, John outlined a somewhat audacious plan to swing for the fences from his baseball enthusiasm for a large town-wide solar energy conversion, starting with the schools, nonprofits, and moving on to other municipal buildings. 7 years later, not only did Litchfield increase its renewables and reduce energy consumption by over 20%, it will have one of the largest or highest percentages of solar-powered municipal energy in Connecticut at over 1.5 megawatts. So as you drive by our solar panels on 202, think of John. By the way, that was a 2-year long ordeal with John's optimism keeping us going through the whole thing. We had pitfalls and pratfalls, but it went through. It was John's inclusiveness, steadfast leadership, and ease of concise communication at board meetings, town meetings, and public hearings that convinced the town of the financial benefits and that going green was not only the environmentally good thing to do, it was the right thing to do for all of us. And by the way, it was the only town meeting I've ever attended in Litchfield where when we passed the solar project, it was about 130 people and it was a unanimous vote. It was a significant achievement for anyone. John implicitly understood the big picture, and we need to nurture our environment and change, and was also willing to lead the way. He quietly walked the walk in his personal life by being an early adopter and living a sustainable life with his award-winning net zero home, EV cars, and bountiful living on Swallowtail Farm. I watched him build that home with a quiet demeanor and his dedication to details. And boy, was he on top of it. He knew where every nail and screw went. In 2019, John began the planning for the next transition for Litchfield from the green team to sustainable Litchfield. And he was the driving force behind the formation of the town committee in early 2020 under the Sustainable Connecticut Certification Program, just as COVID began. Although John's illness began to slow him down a bit as we started that, he spearheaded the new committee as its chair and developed a strategy under Zooming at the time to certify Litchfield not only at bronze, but also at silver in 2021, a feat few municipalities have done, accomplished in a single year. I asked John once, what is the sustainable stuff? What does it really mean? And he replied with a pretty succinct answer. It's a process for living that brings people together in a common desire to improve. I thought that was pretty cool. John's personal friendship has been spoke to by Glenn in other ways. Was the formation of his his exclusive but non-denominational beer drinking club. John formed a beer drinking club during all this, the IPAs, and all the guys with the blue shirts here with their IPA logos are wandering around here today. It was originally a bunch of guys that just met at a brewery once a month, but John, the way he kind of tries to formalize things, he seamlessly transitioned it during the pandemic to a Zoom drink meeting where the discussion required a description of the beer we were drinking that night and some philosophy and political ranting. It really kept us all, really sane during a pretty insane period. I've been thinking much about my friendship with John and what he's meant to me and the legacy he has impacted on all of us. John had such a passion, for his purpose, and his example will live on in us all, whether we know it or not. And I'll end here with a quote from Marcus Aurelius, who was a Roman emperor in 121 to 161. The fruit of this life is a good character and acts for the common good. Indeed, the greatest achievements in human history are unselfish acts. Thank you.
Have to extract myself from snack time. Now? No? Use this one. But how about this one?
You might just have to.
All right, I will project.
Use your lawyer voice.
One of the things my father taught me was projecting. Dad loved a good speech. I want to start by thanking everyone, all of you, for being here today. Also, a big thank you to Berta and the Community Center group for hosting us and putting all of this together. I think it's exactly how Dad would have pictured things, his family and friends together, reflecting on his life and all the things that he tried to teach us along the way. I also want to thank the community up here who did so much to help Dad. Mom mentioned the gardening and the weeding, the food. He truly was amazed by your support, was very thankful for it. And, it really did allow him to spend as much time at Swallowtail as he could. And that was a good thing for him, and his mental state. It's been great to hear everyone's words and thoughts today, and so much has resonated with me, except for one thing. And Berta, the idea that Dad was focused on making meetings more efficient truly shocks me. As someone who enjoyed many a family meeting, these were not efficient affairs. There were PowerPoints, there were coffee breaks, and I'm quite confident I fell asleep during some. But for me, it's been a really interesting process. No one will ever say thank you to cancer, and I'm certainly not going to. I think for Dad and us, it did, however, give us a chance to think about his life while he was with us. And for me, I think that was a really good thing. It hasn't made his passing any easier, but I've found myself thinking about this moment, what I would say to you all, probably longer than I should have. I think honestly, some of the best stuff I came up with at 3 a.m. and never wrote down. So maybe it'll come back to me as we go. But I think it was an opportunity to make sure we took snapshots of parts of our life as we went. Mom mentioned the time in Maine where we brought Dad down to the water, and he truly was happy. It was probably the deviled eggs. They were pretty damn good. But it was a moment that we all made sure to take an imprint of. And the idea of sort of snapshots of that was a good thing. I was thinking about what I wanted to say, and I think that in my mind, it came into focus when we were, for me, going through and pulling pictures. You'll see Kristen did a great job with some collages around the room. There's hundreds of photos that we collected and went through and have shared. And I think that really was, for me, I'm very visual. So it was a very graphical way of seeing the celebration of Dad's life. And I encourage you to look at those pictures. There's also, I think, a theme emerging. There are drinks in a number of them. We certainly did enjoy a good IPA along the way. I think Dad's always been a man of purpose, and some of my early memories, it was the gardening. There were more gardens in our house in Fairfield than there should have been. More vegetables in Swallowtail than he should have produced. But whatever the passion of the day, he truly committed himself to it, embraced it, and it was infectious. And I remember early on when we were working the yard, Chrissy managed to extract herself, I think, from that a little faster than I did. True enough, in high school, when Karen and I were dating, she called one Saturday and said, you want to hang out? And I told her, unbelievably, well, we just got a really big delivery of mulch, so we kind of have to do that. And now that as she got to know Dad better, she realized that wasn't an excuse. It wasn't a lie. We literally had a huge pile of mulch, and that was what I was doing that day. But I think it was a really important part of my growing up where we were out working together in nature, spending time together, doing things that he really enjoyed. That has carried over to our family. Don't claim to have the green thumb that he did, but have picked up some of his skills and tools along the way. One of the other parts about the last month or so has been kind of looking at Dad's life and interacting with his friends in a new and different way. You've heard about the Farm League. Howard Kroplik, one of the other owners, is here today with us. I don't think, are you guys tied for championships, or did Dad beat you?
We're about tied.
About tied. So they had a long, over 40-year battle, and I've had the chance of spending time with the Farm League, more so in the last probably 7 years of joining drafts and participating. And I heard back from one of the other owners when I let them know about Dad's passing. He said, this is Dave Booth, commented, in retrospect, John was one of the very few people I have known who was both liked and respected by everyone. And I kind of like that. I think that it's probably not surprising to many of you, but I like seeing it written. And I think thinking about Dad that way, that he accomplished throughout all these different stages of his life, being successful, bringing about change, but doing it in a way that kept people on his side and really rooting for him. The Farm League was a really important part of his life, and seeing now, he's an organized guy, right? Binders galore, binders for Farm League, binders for his estate plan, passwords and things like that. And looking over it, I got to say, if the frequency of a password is an indication of how important something is in someone's life, the Farm League's up there at the top. Second, maybe only to some of our predeceased pets. But I think, over the last decade or so, Dad's really thrown himself into numerous volunteer activities. We've heard about a lot of those today. And when he stepped down as president of the Community Center board, each of the board members wrote a little letter to him, and it was put into a book, and he displayed that proudly at his house. And I was looking through it, and there was another quote that I think I like, and I want to share with you all. Mary Ann said, "As we all know, a lighthouse is a tower with a beacon light, which guides ships at sea. It stands quiet and tall and provides direction for all who see it." I think of John that way. And I think we all do, Mary Ann, and I think it's a great way to think of him and sort of the lighting path that he's providing for all of us. So I'd like to end with an Irish poem that I think many of you know and remember, but I do think fits Dad and this moment pretty well. May the road rise to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sunshine warm upon your face. May the rains fall upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the hollow of his hand. So, Dad, I'll see you again, but not for a while. Until then, we'll think of you every time we jump in Papa's truck for a run to school or even better, a dump run. We'll do our best to mimic your classic rubber face photo pose. And we'll forever and always see you with the birds. So thank you.
In this time together, we have wept and we have laughed. We have celebrated and we have honored the gift of John Post's life. We have remembered his delight in life, his joy in creation, his adoration of his grandkids, his contagious enthusiasm, his many passions. We have remembered the one who was the best man you knew, the maker of jams, the maker of connections, the maker of friends, the purveyor of optimism. But this too, we should remember, that our God is a God who cherishes us from birth and continues to cherish us after our time here is over. That there is a place of welcome beyond this world where those we love are themselves loved. There is a beautiful passage in Isaiah, more trees. And it says this. It says, "You shall go out in joy and be led home in peace. The mountains and the hills before you shall burst into song, and all the trees of the field shall clap their hands." Who more than John would have earned such a welcome from all creation? John indeed has been led back in peace. And before him, the mountains and the hills and all the angels themselves have burst into song. Before him, the trees of the field have clapped their hands as they welcomed him into that place of endless joy. Let's close our time together by joining our hearts in prayer. Let us pray. God of love and memory, God of laughter and tears, God of every moment of our lives and of this moment, thank you. Thank you for John, a child of your creation, shaped by your hands, breathed into life by your spirit. Thank you for every moment of blessing that we shared with him, every moment of joy and delight. Thank you for the love he gave and the love he received. All of them reminders of your great love, alive within and around him. So help us now through the journey of grief which each person here travels, and most especially loving one. Be present on that journey with those for whom this loss has been so hard. The family who cherishes him, the friends who walked beside him. God of all love, help us to see beyond this creation to that place of joy and welcome where John now lives in light and peace, where the mountains and the hills before him have burst into song, and all the trees of the field have clapped their hands in welcome. That place where we will all one day be gathered again. Amen. We invite our friends from the Western Lands Trio forward again. And if I'm not mistaken, you wouldn't mind if we sing along with you, is that right? Okay, this land is your land.
Sing out like you mean it. This is a great song to sing.
You know, one of his passions that wasn't mentioned was his love for music, especially people singing together. Thank you for having us do these 2 numbers. This land is your land, this land is my land, from California to the New York Islands, from the Redwood Forests to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. As I was walking that Linden highway, I saw above me that endless skyway. I saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land, this land is my land. From California to the New York Islands, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. I roamed and I rambled and I followed my footsteps to the sparkling sands of her diamond desert. And all around me a voice kept sounding. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land, this land is my land. From California to the New York Islands, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. The sun was shining as I went strolling, and the wheat fields waiting, and the sky rolling. As the fog was lifting, the voice kept chanting. This land was made for you and me. Harmony. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Islands, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. Last chance. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Islands, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me.
Well, we hope you all join us for some food snacks. Not fruit snacks.